Hi, I'm Neha Matthews, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. It's the end of the year and a contested end of a decade. India has been through some major events this year, changes whose ramifications we're going to see in the years to come. On this episode, Liz Mathew, who covers the BJP, joins us to talk about major political events that shaped 2019. And our rural affairs editor, Harish Damodaran, details how the economic slowdown crept up and became apparent this year, and whether the worst is over for now. But first, we want to take this chance to thank you, our listeners. 2019 has been a huge year for us, and the response we've gotten from you is overwhelming. We've seen the Three Things podcast rack up close to 4 million listens. This is obviously very exciting for us, the Express Audio team. So again, we want to thank you for supporting us and tuning into the podcast. Do continue to write in with any feedback you have and tweet to us at the rate Express Podcasts. Tell us your favorite episodes this year, what you'd like to hear from us in 2020. So thank you for listening, and now on with the show. We are joined by Liz Mathew. 2019 has been an interesting year for the ruling party, from its sweeping victory in the Lok Sabha elections to a dismal performance in the Jharkhand state elections. Liz joins us to detail the political highlights and tell us what can be expected from 2020. So Liz, 2019 was a very big year for the BJP. It was a big year for politics as well. We saw some major changes happening in India. One, we see in May, there was a sweeping victory for the BJP. But as the year progressed, we see them progressively losing their vote base. We saw them losing Jharkhand recently. Before that, Maharashtra, Haryana was a very close call. Is the BJP sensing a sort of insecurity creeping up?
No, I don't think that, you have to say it differently. See, BJP, like you said, many have expected, but not many have expected the kind of majority they got. They crossed 300. So that nobody expected. So they have consolidated their position at the national level. See, BJP is still dominating and overshadowing all other parties. The second one, the Congress, is much, much behind. But what has proved in 2018 and 2019 to an extent that the people vote in one way at the national level, but differently at the state level. So we have talked much about it. But one thing that, BJP's one challenge would be bringing up or coming up with very credible leadership in the state. BJP at one point of time had regional satraps, but no longer they have that, other than Fadnavis, who kind of failed to get that kind of a political support, though, we cannot see the Maharashtra election result as a defeat for BJP. If you look at the strike rate, BJP's performance was very good because he couldn't. It is more of a leadership failure because they couldn't do the political management. It was not an electoral defeat as such, per se. Haryana, BJP, again, it is to an extent, it was the leadership issue. It was the Khattar was not so popular, but towards the end, whatever they have gained must have been because it is close to Delhi. It is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's appeal and his popularity. Even in Jharkhand, we have seen that, it is Raghubar Das, although people say that you cannot blame the state leadership only. It is correct that it was Raghubar Das who was unpopular, but the national leadership's failure or the issue came up when they failed to listen to the other sections of the whatever feedback they should have got, did not get it, because anybody who had gone to Jharkhand has seen that, the unpopularity of this year. And 2019, it was not, other than the first national election, it was not a good year for BJP because they, like all the three elections, they couldn't come up to that expectation. The state-wise, even before 2018 and also, the three major key states, the party lost. So if you look at the saffron, the states in the India map, from 2014 to 2019 end, it's only the Northeast and the ally in Bihar and UP. UP continues to be its major fortress. That's the only advantage BJP has in terms of state, They lost Punjab, they lost Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and also even Karnataka, for that matter, it was not a clear victory. Maharashtra, they lost power. So state-wise, it was a year of losses for BJP.
And 2019, like you mentioned, also seems to be where we see Amit Shah come to the forefront of things. We have him making the Kashmir announcement, the abrogation of Article 370, and now talking about the Citizenship Amendment Act as well. Is there more power being given to Amit Shah in this context?
No, it is not. Actually, one can say that 2019 was his year. It was Amit Shah's year. It is like, if you look at the way it was functioning, it is like even Prime Minister is giving away that kind of roles to Mr. Shah, because he is emerged as a man of action. Modi is more of a brand image now. And, the man who is implementing the party's agenda, whether it is the scrapping of 370 and whether it is Citizenship Amendment Act, and now he has been the one who's talking about NRC the most. And also, if you talk about Ayodhya, Ayodhya is the it was judicial verdict, but who's going to implement? The Home Ministry will be in charge of constructing a temple, and he's the first one. Even Prime Minister did not speak about it. He's the first one who talked about we will construct a temple, sky high temple. So there also the three major agenda issue of the RSS and the BJP. He is the man who is implementing the party's agenda and the RSS agenda. So in that way, when you talk about the BJP and its politics, it is Shah who is actually at the top. So whether that is going to change, it is unlikely to change. Even if Nadda is going to be, as of now, it is believed that even if Nadda is going to be the president, it is Shah who will be monitoring and, taking all the decisions. One has to wait and see.
Have you seen any sort of change in the narrative for the BJP? And we know that the previous 5 years, a lot of talk was about economic development. Now there seems to be a very perceptible shift in terms of the narrative. We see more nationalism coming to the forefront. What can we expect in 2020?
See, BJP, as we know that, we have always held that plank of nationalism just ahead of 2019 election. We have seen Pulwama, we have seen Balakot, and how the party had used it, and how always party whip up that jingoism over this nationalism issues. We have seen that whether it was national anthem, whether it was national flag, to anything, BJP is at the forefront and always, in a way taking a stand that it belonged to us. And the rest are other stakeholders are we are doing a favor to them. That is the party's stand, and party has been taking that stand for long, since at least 2014. It has been loud and clear. But, when it comes to the Citizenship Amendment Act, it is not about the nationalism. It is more or less a consolidation of the Hindu vote. There is a polarizing element come to it, because this NRC is a very clear polarizing agent. The CAA also, all the citizenship laws. But here there is a catch to it, because it is not that only the Muslims are getting affected by NRC. CAA, maybe Muslims can talk about it, and also because BJP is trying hard to make it as a Muslim protest, although it was not that in many parts of the country. It is somehow coming to that. Gradually it is coming to that. It is a Muslim. If you forget about the national, the metros or urban areas, if you go down to little tier 2 cities and all, you can see that it is only Muslims protesting, or at least this is the picture we are getting from different places. When the Hindus look at it is as a Muslim issue, obviously BJP will get the support and consolidate the Hindu vote. The economic issues, the slowdown, the joblessness have actually drifted a large section of fence-sitters towards the other side, towards the critic side. But now with this issue, a lot of people are jumping in to the other bandwagon of supporting CAA, because they look at it as it's to keep the Muslims away. If you look back, you can see that BJP always took advantage of such a situation where the general apathy or general antagonism towards the minority, especially Muslims. And we have seen they have expected that. And to an extent, it helped also the party in states like Bengal. Here, again, Bengal, which is going to face the election in 2021, there also BJP has been preparing the ground. They have really reaped high in Lok Sabha election. So this NRC and CAA will be very significant topic in these states.
Are there any political highlights that our listeners should know about? What should we expect?
Yeah, of course, Delhi election in February and also Bihar election. Delhi election would be a kind of test for BJP whether litmus test for BJP whether the polarization has actually happened and it is going to help them electorally. One. And in Bihar, whether, they have to really, it is going to be in the second half of the year. So whether the economic slowdown and the joblessness, whether the party will be able to highlight the emotive issues like CAA and NRC to overshadow the failures they're facing, one has to wait and see. These are the two major political events which are coming up, and also the leadership change in the BJP, because there will be an organization change also, because the organization will be a new organization. The new general secretaries, new committees, everything will be new. So under the new leadership, how the BJP is going to function, these are the three things I think 2020 for the BJP it will be important. For the Congress, if you talk about, it's about the leadership. We have seen that, in 2019, we have seen Congress is is facing at the lowest thing, they haven't improved much after 2014 but towards the end, Congress has improved its credibility by keeping the BJP away from power in Maharashtra, by doing well, relatively well in Haryana, and also forming a government in Jharkhand. They have improved their credibility as the leading opposition party in the country. At the same time, the leadership issue, Sonia Gandhi, as we know that she's supposed to be a temporary arrangement till a new president is taking over. Whether Rahul Gandhi will, as many in the party expect Rahul Gandhi, whether he will take over or somebody from outside Gandhi family. Chances are bleak, but you never know. So that is going to be very important for the Congress. And for the opposition, the Congress has to keep the opposition united, and for which the Congress camp itself has to be strengthened and it has to be more cohesive.
Next, Rural Affairs editor Harish Damodaran joins us to detail how structural problems in our economy have become apparent in 2019 and whether we will see a recalibration in policy decisions in the next year. Harish, now 2019, we've seen some very festering problems in the economy all cropping up at once, it seems. Last year, India was the world's fastest growing major economy. But by 2019, it seems like the symptoms of an economic slowdown became very prominent. Do you see this current slowdown as a culmination of various structural problems?
I think basically 2019 was a year when the slowdown came into the open, whereas probably it was already there, which we were not recognizing. Actually, what happened was you had disruptions from demonetization and GST. Those disruptions basically caused problems to the informal and unorganized sector. Those really suffered very badly, which was not probably captured in the official data. And it happened to be that 2017 and 2018, the organized sector did well, the listed companies. So it could very well have been the case that the listed companies gained at the expense of the unorganized and informal sector. And if you see most listed companies, they did well in 2017-18. And even a large part of 2018-19. My guess is that it was not visible. What happened is, I think 2019 basically was a period when everything came into the open. We started recognizing there was a slowdown only when the auto companies and your car sales started falling, FMCG sales started coming down. You had the story of Britannia and Parle-G and all these things, the biscuit. So my feeling is that there was already a problem, and we know that the informal sector accounts for about 50% of employment, and we don't know, maybe 40% of India's GDP, which was not being probably measured, And since the people there were losing jobs and incomes, ultimately it, I think, affected demand overall in the economy, because ultimately even the biscuit manufacturers and two-wheeler people, they ultimately sell to the masses. And that's what probably came into the open. And then what you were mentioning about IL&FS. Yes. That again, the main problem was that you had, after demonetization, you had a flood of liquidity with banks. lot of deposits, lot of cash. So they didn't know what to do with it. So they lent out that money to the NBFCs.
Do you believe that
Okay.
happened after demonetization?
After demonetization, yeah, because
Not a bad loans crisis that was waiting to happen for a few years now.
basically when they had a flood of deposits coming into it, they had to lend it out to somebody. So they lent it out basically to the NBFCs. And the NBFCs in turn largely lent to real estate. And this is what Arvind Subramanian, the former CEA, Chief Economic Advisor, has been calling as TBS2. That is basically the twin balance sheet crisis episode number 2. So the first episode, the first wave was, basically banks lending to infrastructure companies, to steel companies, to telecom companies, etc. And the second one, what he was saying is that basically the banks lend to the NBFCs. So what happened is once Island FS collapsed, what happened is suddenly the liquidity froze, because suddenly everybody started looking at NBFCs with the same brush, started painting NBFCs with the same brush. And probably the NBFCs were doing a lot of financing also of the informal sector, of shops and all these things. So once that stopped, the liquidity in the entire system was affected. So that is the reason. So I think 2019 in that way has been, I would say it's a good thing in the sense that everything came out in the open, whereas otherwise probably we were not seeing it. Whereas say if a Maruti is stopping production, if a TVS is stopping production, if a Bajaj or a Hero is stopping production, that becomes obvious. Whereas if a small units, if they lay off and all, we don't notice it. And the fact is many small industries, small MSMEs, etc., were closing down, which we didn't observe. So I think 2019 has been in that sense where even government was forced to accept that there was a slowdown. Otherwise, probably, because it is not showing in the CSO, in the GDP data. So all these things about that we were the fastest growing economy and all, maybe the actual data was not capturing. And that is why there was this report which was leaked out, the National Sample Survey Office's Household Consumption Survey report. And that report very clearly shows that there's been a negative growth in consumption in 2017-18. And 2017-18 was supposed to be a good year for the Indian economy, right? I mean, it didn't do very badly. And that's what the CSO data says. So I think there's a lot of problem also with the data and these kind of things. So now there is a lot of scope for the government to assume that things are not all that great. So you start with low expectations. So I think 2020, the new decade, will start with low expectations. And then, and then if you over-fulfill, that is better rather than you start off with a lot of expectations. And I think there are going to be a lot of pressure points. One very important pressure point is going to be revenues of governments, both the center as well as the state governments. I think definitely there's going to be an impact on the fiscal position, the ability of governments to spend. So I would say that will be another pressure point. A third pressure point, which I think is the return of food inflation. You had a period where food prices were very low for extended periods, whereas now you're beginning to see that the prices of many foodstuffs are rebounding, not just onion, but even, whether it is milk, whether it is pulses, whether it is even sugar, which will in turn put inflationary pressures, right? We are seeing even telecom companies, for example. Now today, I think Airtel has increased the rates for prepaid. Yes. So you will see a lot of inflationary pressures also coming in, which again restricts the scope for monetary policy. Fiscal policy is restricted because there is no revenues with the government. So it's going to be a very challenging time for the government, I think, in the coming.
And as you said, I think because these problems became so apparent, the central government had to take measures for it. We saw certain moves. Many people are saying that maybe it was aimed at the wrong side of things, maybe not investment. Consumption needs to be dealt with. We had bank mergers. We had multiple RBI repo rate cuts. Do you feel like all of these changes will address more structural problems? Is the worst over? Will we see a payoff in 2020?
See, all these are not going to have immediate effects, whether it's a corporate tax rate cut or the merger of banks. If banks are going to spend more time in merger and deciding, probably a bank manager won't know where he's going to be posted. So probably a lot of time of banks is going to be taken up by all these nitty-gritty, these kind of things. So probably they may not have that kind of time for lending and all these things. And there is a lot of evidence of risk aversion among banks. Banks don't want to lend. Banks are afraid of lending. There may be many bankable projects which may not get funding, the adequate funding, because banks are afraid. Banks are afraid of your non-performing assets. So I think we are going to have a very challenging year, and maybe it is better to start the year with very low expectations. Maybe, it could be 3 quarters, it could be 4 quarters, it could be a very gradual recovery. It may not be this thing. And it would be better to have a recovery that is healthy, not based on steroids, right?
Not something, not knee-jerk.
Yes.
And we also had the UK-based Center for Economics and Business Research talking about how now our 5 trillion GDP goal, which the government had estimated we'll reach by 2024, they're saying they estimate it to be reached by 2026. Are we seeing that recovery taking time, but we will hit that target?
Definitely, it is going to take time. All the projections which we are making, they all have to be now redrawn. I would say this year, if we are going to grow, say 2019-20, say at 5%, I think next year is going to be 6%. Maybe the following year would be 6.5%. And what we should hope is that there are not too many disruptions. There have been too many shocks to the economy, starting with demonetization, then GST, and then all these recent, including these unnecessary social tensions. So we don't know what is going to be the impact on sentiment because of things like Citizenship Amendment Bill and NRC and all, When people are afraid, when they become insecure, that again dampens sentiment. So maybe we should not have too many disruptions. I think that is something.
Subramaniam said this, right? He said no surprises in the budget needed.
Yes, possible, whatever, whether it is positive or negative surprises, See, there is a certain resilience in the economy, which is very natural. So you allow that resilience to play out. Don't further undermine it through unnecessary new measures, suddenly asking for people's documentation. So insecurity is not going to help at all. I think one positive thing maybe is that the world economy seems to be now slowly on the recovery path. There has been a US-China deal. So maybe, global trade would be better next year. And that is where maybe we can take advantage of. So I think the Modi government should look at itself, should not think about anything before maybe 2024. They should look at when we enter elections in 2024, the Indian economy is growing at 7.5 to 8%. In the meantime, things are going to be really tough, and I think especially the fiscal is going to be a major, whether it is the center or the state governments.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.